when Filmation came up, it's like, wow, this is, really, really good job. It's like year-round employment. There was a lot of work to do. And so I was happy to be doing it. And then I had been animating on the other shows. And on this one, I said, I want to do storyboard. Because I thought doing storyboard would be something different. So I storyboard. I did do some animation on it too. But I remember when I was working on the He-Man show, I turned to my friend next to me, Don Manuel, and I said, Don, the name of this show isn't really He-Man, right? That's like a temporary name. Maybe that's just a temporary title. Maybe it's like Ragnar, Karnak. No, it's He-Man. Okay. I storyboarded a lot of the movie Secret of the Sword. I did about a third of that show, and then I was directing on She-Ra. So I directed a bunch of She-Ras and getting to do those episodes, and that was fun.
Still going back to He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, in those early stages of development, have you ever imagined that it would become such a big thing, planetary hit?
I know. I'm so surprised because of all the shows that I did in the 1980s, He-Man's the only one where there's still fans. Like I still get invited to conventions, to like fan conventions and all about He-Man, and I'm like when I started, it was just a job to me, and it's become such a phenomenon. It's like it's memories for so many people, and I'll go to these festivals and I'll say, what was your inspiration when you did show MU-37 Castle of Heroes? I'm like, I pay my rent, like I pay my credit cards. But that show just has staying power with people, that they all loved it.
There seems to be this trend in the 80s coming from, I believe, Rosetta aesthetics. Mm-hmm. Of sword and sorcery in kids shows. You mentioned the Black Cauldron, for example, and another shows of Hanna-Barbera.
Was Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings?
Yeah. In hindsight, what do you see as elements that contributed for this enduring quality of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe? Was it just the marketing and Mattel's effort surrounding the show, or do you find, as an historian and as an educator, something particular about the show that justifies this enduring quality?
Well, yeah, I think the secret with He-Man was starting in the mid '70s, the late '70s, when they developed the game Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of young people going through college were reading Tolkien. They're all reading The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. And there was this sort of fascination with this sort of sword and sorcery kind of culture. And with modern culture being so complex, with like Watergate and the Vietnam War and the counterculture, and there was sort of a societal exhaustion, I think, around the time Nixon resigned. And there was a yearning for simplicity, kind of like the way our grandparents' society worshiped cowboys. Like the idea about cowboys is that there isn't a lot of, there's not a class system. It's not about status. It's about you and your gun out in the desert and, trying to survive. But from my generation, the cowboy was kind of played out. There was so much, Bonanza and all the cowboy movies, that by the late '60s, people were like, they were tired of that. So the sword and sorcery thing had a kind of an appeal to it. The other thing that happened was, starting about 1978 to about 1982, there was the first video game, the first interactive game craze, which was like Space Invaders and Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and all those games that you played, in a video arcade. And then later on, when people started to get laptops, they got some of the earliest games, Pong, and all those things, Q*bert, all that stuff. And there was a big rush. There was like a boom of interactive games, and the authorities at the time in the early '80s were saying nobody's going to play with toys anymore. Nobody's going to play with Barbie or G.I. Joe. They're just going to play video games all the time. And like anything else, it reached its it reached its saturation point where the public just got bored of all these things. There's so many of them. There were so many knockoffs and low budget versions of things that, they just kind of. So in 1983, there was a big interactive game crash where like suddenly all those Coleco and Intellivision and Atari were suddenly like in very bad shape. They suddenly lost a lot of revenue, where people got sick of video games. They were burying video games in landfills in the trash. They were like trucks full of these things, just dumping them. So right around the time this interactive game craze had reached its exhaustion, here's He-Man. And it's a simple, all it is, it's a hero and a villain with no instructions, with no wires, with nothing complicated. You just, you just play with the good guy and the bad guy, and the good guy's obvious and the bad guy's obvious, and they just, and. I mean, in a way, that was kind of like the appeal of Star Wars, because when Star Wars came out, all the movies were all movies about social consciousness and corruption. The Godfather and the French Connection, and it's all about the government's corrupt and we're corrupt and we did terrible things to the Indians and we did terrible things to our minorities. And Star Wars was just this silly, let's have fun, good guys, bad guys, and shoot lasers. And everybody went, yay! And it was like a big craze. So I think just an opportunity gets created, and something comes, something falls in at the right time. And I think He-Man hit right when that first interactive game craze was crashing. And because at the time we were doing the series, the toy was already the best-selling toy in the world. Like, even before this series. And the series just cemented it, just made it even bigger, So there was something about the toy that everybody just enjoyed. Did you ever hear the story about the origin of He-Man and the connection with Arnold Schwarzenegger?
I heard about Conan the Barbarian, that they wanted to put Conan the Barbarian into a cartoon, but it was far too violent to market to kids.
Yeah, they made a deal. Yeah, they made a deal with Mattel to market toys on Conan, and the director, John Milius, wound up making a much more adult movie, much more sexual and violent than they thought it would. In the meantime, they had warehouses in China full of these little figures. And they go, what do we do? So let's just change it a little bit, change the design, change the hair and stuff. And then that was it. So then it's like He-Man. Like, okay.